Okay. Oh, we're on. And hello, this has taken a while. We seem to have bad internet on the weekends here at home, so hopefully this will go through. We're not sure, but we'll try. And the questions are dropping back each week now. They're getting less and less, which is good because we're answering all your questions, but obviously now everything's winding down a bit as well. That's the nature of the game. But we've still got 3 out there and they're having a bit of fun. But before I get into that, what else is happening around town? Jean-Luc is very busy. We had to reschedule the live we want to do with him. He's taken the mast out of the boat. The boat's now been sold to an entrant for 2022, and he will remain confidential, that entrant, for probably about a year. But anyway, he sold the boat, so the mast is coming out, and part of the deal was he put a new mast in the boat before it gets sold. So he was pretty busy on that, and we get together on Monday, and then this coming week Jean-Luc starts to disappear because he's been bombarded by people wanting to have him talk and present at corporate functions and things like that, but he can't do that because he's got to write his book. So he's head down. He'll be writing starting this week. He's got decided on which company he'll publish the book with, and there's also his television, French television profile on his life, which is going to be very interesting. It's in French. I'm hoping that it's for French TV, and it'd be great to think we could get it and put some subtitles on it and have a look at it. But it'll go through the whole lot, from his mini transats to his BOC challenges to the Vendée Globe to his East-West record circumnavigation attempt that he still holds, and so on. So that'll be quite interesting. Mark Slatz has got his boat out of the water. It's in the hall at the big boat show over there, so he'll be there. It starts on Wednesday, so if you're around, you can go there for Wednesday. And Mark's big problem now, he's desperate to come back and see Uku, and Uku looks like he's going to arrive now either on Friday night or early Saturday morning, which is kind of interesting. And there's a bit of a tussle there, and he's rung a few times really because he's got some very big presentation to do on Saturday. He's saying one's going to have a few thousand people coming along to listen to this talk, and he's a bit stuck on it because technically he's supposed to be here, but I know Uku won't mind if he's not, and he says he's ready to jump in his car and drive overnight, things like this. But we'll just wait and see what happens. But certainly some big things for Mark going on there, and also his extra adventures and stuff. So if he doesn't make it on the weekend because of that clash, then he'll come and meet up with Uku straight after. And Jean-Luc and I are supposed to be going to Spain, to Bilbao, to do the sailing festival, which is really good, but we're not sure on that now. We're supposed to get on the plane on Friday, so that may not happen yet. And what else is happening? Oh, we heard a bit of intel on Nabil. Nabil's apparently cruising in the Caribbean now. He didn't go home at all. He went south, so he's having a bit of fun there. We're not sure whether he's coming to the prize giving or not. We haven't heard yet, but most of the others have come back and said they'll be here. Tommy's trying to get permission from the Navy, and Gregor's going to be here. They're still trying to sort out the salvage on his boat. Cody says there's an American philanthropist that's putting the money in now to make sure it happens, but he didn't mention his name. And it's certainly time's ticking by because there's a weather window which makes it a little bit easier, and that's running out now. We've already lost February, we go into March, the weather starts to turn, the wind direction turns, so the longer it takes them now, the more challenge it'll be to get out there and grab the boat. It's good to see the track is still working, so at least they know where it is, but every week they don't go is another potential risk there, but that's another story. So the prize giving presentation, it is going to be public. The detail will be announced by the agglomeration, by Les Sables d'Olonne here very soon, maybe next week or the week after. But if you're planning to come, if you're here on the Easter Monday, you will get to be part of the presentations. It'll be on a stage, and the public are involved with that. I can't give you the details because we're not finally sure yet, and that'll be up to Les Sables d'Olonne to make all those announcements at the press conference. What else is happening? I think that's the main elements. We'll update Uku's arrival times and so on. He's doing really well now. I just did a live on Facebook, which did get through, had a few little hiccups, but it got through. So you can see the weather he's got. And sorry, it was a disaster with the focus. We had to use a different mount. It was a bit further away, and it wasn't a particularly good one, but you can see what's going on. And he's going to have a quick ride in. So watch this space. Kind of fun. Istvan's got challenges, and it'll depend on what his tactic is going to be. If he keeps trying to claw north, I think he'll do okay. If he gets sucked out to the east like Uku did, he may end up taking a bit longer again, because he'll end up with quite a few days of headwinds. But for now, it's looking reasonable for him. And Tapio is just plodding along. It's again for him, it's average stuff. Nothing to scream about. Suhaili is slowly but surely pulling away, and I don't think he's going to hold him. So we won't be seeing him anytime soon. But he's safe and happy and enjoying his new tweeting. As you know, we've let him use the satellite phone. He'll be the last one out there eventually. So there's plenty of space and time to give some more explanation of exactly what's happening with him every day. And I know people are enjoying that, and so are we. So that's pretty cool. Oh, the other thing is, as you know, we're making a model. Here's a sneak peek. I can't tell you too much, but this is one of the first pictures of the Suhaili official model. So we're going to do 50 of these. Very soon on Facebook you will see the official Suhaili model for this edition of the GGR. It's fantastic. I want one, that's for sure. Anyway, and they will be available. We'll give you the whole story later on. They're being made as trophies, the first 3 trophies for first, second and third in the race. And they'll have some pretty unique aspects to them. So we'll tell you more on that once the first prototype's finished, which should be this week. So keep an eye out for that, and then we'll get some pictures out, and it's very cool. Okay, I think we'll go straight into questions. There's only 8 questions or something to go here. So Emilio Burnett wanted to know what sort of stoves and fuel are the entrants using, and there's a bit of a mixed bag. Some are using gas, and they're taking about 40 pounds of gas to get around the world, just traditional gas burners. Some are using the jet boil as a backup, and as a simpler process. A jet boil is like a trekking, a backpacking type stove that you take into the mountains in the bush, and it has disposable cartridges on the bottom, but you can get a little gimbal for them, and they're incredibly efficient. So if you're using freeze-dried meals, you can boil like a litre of water in a minute or so. It's really fast because they keep all the heats captivated around the container. So super efficient, they're gimbaled, so even in rough weather you can easily boil up water. I know Susie was using paraffin, kerosene. Mark Slats was using kerosene and a jet boil, so he'd use kerosene for usual stuff, but then he'd have the jet boil with gas canisters for that, for other bits and pieces. And yeah, it was across the board. Some were using alcohol. Personally, I really like alcohol. I like the Origo alcohol stoves. I've used them a lot in the past. Very simple to fill up their sort of round container and change the tanks even if it's rough. So that's about it. There's a mixed bag. Malcolm Collins wanted to know when we do the book, when I write the book, which I've got the structure and everything done and a few other bits, but I'm going to have to stop soon and just sort of get stuck into it. It might not be till we get back to Tonga, but anyway, we'll see. The objective there is to try and get it out by November or something. It's going to take a while. It's not like Mark Slats. His book was written for him while he's sailing around the world. And the book is going really well for him. He sold 400 copies on the day he arrived on the dock there, which is pretty cool. But anyway, the GGR official book will be later this year, so look out for that. And the question was, will we be doing a lot of statistics in the back of the book? One of the things we mentioned for the book was the heavy weather survey that Sir Robin is doing for interviewing all the entrants and getting opinions and feelings on what worked, what didn't. It's sort of just about completed now, but then it goes back to be reviewed by all the entrants themselves. And once all the entrants have had a final chance to comment on it further, Robin will review that again, and the schedule is to release that on the day before the prize giving. So the prize giving is on April the 22nd, Easter Monday. There will be a pretty simple press conference here in Les Sables d'Olonne on that day, actually. It's on that Monday when all the entrants are together. That'll be in the morning, and that'll be the first any of the media get to see it. And we'll just let that run in the press release, I think. So that's when it'll finally be released, and there'll be a copy of that in the back of the book. But as to statistics, is wondering about, he wanted to know the percentage of wind strengths and directions, and how many times they reefed, and what water consumption they were using, different food types, what about the anti-fouling, a whole series of statistics. Now there will be be an appendix at the back, and there will be some statistics, but it's not going to be the ants pants with answers to everything. A lot of it is now already coming out. In Practical Boat Owner in the UK, Barry wrote a substantial assessment on a lot of the subjects you're talking about, and the entrants themselves will be writing in the various magazines. We tend not to repost the stuff that's going into general media on the outside, because that's where you go to look for it. But I appreciate that if you're not in England and you can't get hold of Practical Boat Owner, it's a bit of a problem. So we'll address that. We may post some of the PDFs of the magazines once that issue's gone, so they can sell as many magazines as they can. And then once that's died and put to bed, we might, because the material was generated actually in that particular case by Barry, our media guy. So yeah, there's bits and pieces that are being put together, and I'm sure everyone will benefit from that. But there won't be you could write a whole book on the statistics of the GGR. That's the problem. So, but anyway, there'll be some interesting stuff coming, and it'll keep coming for a long time. Okay, Darwin Korea wanted to know the effectiveness of the radio direction finders. He thinks that why do we have them? They're a waste of time. All the stations have shut down, and you couldn't use them. Well, it's not the case in actual fact, because the direction finders will tune in on the various frequencies. And first of all, the entrants had different types of radio direction finders. For those that don't know what they are, I'll give you the simplest format. It's similar to a hand-bearing compass, okay? So it's got like this thing, the aerial. It might have a handle on it, might have a receiver there, and it's got a compass on the top. And instead of taking a bearing on a lighthouse that's over there, right, you have a set of earphones, and if the lighthouse was there, if there's no lighthouse now, but it's a transmitting station for the beacon, you put your earphones on, and as you bring this unit past it, it'll be going, you get a null point, or it can go up, or it can go down, or it can go really strong, and then when you're right on it, it's the strongest, and as you go away from it, you go. So when you get the high point and you're pointing pretty well straight at it, you take a bearing off your compass, okay, and then you treat that as the same as if you did a compass bearing from a lighthouse for normal navigation. You get a fix and so on. And you, as with any lighthouse, and some may remember what happened to Philippe Peche when he sailed straight past Lanzarote. He forgot the most simple of all fundamental aspects of identifying a lighthouse. Every lighthouse have a different flashing sequence, and he forgot to count the flashes and sailed straight right past it. Couldn't find the lighthouse, you know. So with a radio direction finder, you actually have a sound signal. It's a Morse code signal. So the lighthouse might be S and O. Well, you all know SOS is diddy-da, dot, 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 or diddy-da, da, 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 diddy-dee, da, 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 diddy-dee. There's three, you know, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, 3 long. So when you're listening to the Morse code signal, you get the identification of that beacon, which is listed on the chart, and that's how it works. Anyway, they also listen into normal music channels. Some of them you can put it on and listen to your local radio stations. So if you've got a little country town and they've got their aerial somewhere, you can tune into that music, and you see where their aerial is, and you can take a radio direction bearing on that. Even if you don't know where the aerial is and you know where the town is, and you're 100 miles away or 200 miles, you can get a general bearing of where the town is. The other thing is they'll tune into what's called aero radio beacons, because all aircraft, even though they've got GPS, that system might fall out of the sky sometimes. So they're still using radio beacons in a lot of the airports. And on your charts, you'll see little aero, you know, little dot and a circle around it. So, and a radio direction finder will pick up those aero beacons as well. So basically, I haven't asked the entrants on other occasions, but just getting to Lanzarote, 2 or 3 of the entrants actually used, to their great surprise, their radio direction finder, right? So they are still handy. They're not a last resort thing, but if you're not using GPS and you've just got a sextant and it's cloudy or something's happening and you can't get a sight, a radio direction finder will give you a general indication of where you are. You know, you can take a couple of bearings. So they still have real relevance for anyone who's sailing without a GPS, and that's why the entrants have got them, and a few of them have actually used them. So quite interesting. Okay, Robert Nisbet wanted to know what happens if one of the entrants hit a submerged object like a steel container. It's not good. Okay, but the one thing I'll say is that the GGR boats are very good at impact resistance to items. They have a solid keel, right? A very long forefoot and a full keel. So the first thing that happens is if you're sailing along with a boat like that, when it hits it, it'll usually take a glancing blow. It'll bounce off, and they're very solid, thick hulls and so on. So it's not as if it's got a thin keel with a drop piece that comes along. You get clunk. You know, with our sort of keels on GGR boats, the boats be inclined to possibly go at an angle right up like an icebreaker. You know, they'll zip up because it's a nice even angle. You know, there's no thing. So the boat's design is good for hitting underwater objects. It's less impact because it's softening the blow. You know, you're not stopping all of a sudden. Secondly, the hulls are very thick. That's why the design way back then, they've got, you know, usually solid hulls, really super thick, not fragile cord hulls with a you know, 1 or 2 millimeter skin on the outside, foam on the inside. That's not so good for impact resistance unless you're using high tech like carbon fibre or Kevlar and so on. So that's kind of good. Then he asks, what sort of watertight bulkheads do we have? Well, the only thing that's mandatory for GGR boats is a collision bulkhead up forward. So that's if you rammed into an iceberg or hit the side of a ship. It's just if the bow of the boat collapses, you do have a collision bulkhead directly behind that. Everything else in terms of extra watertight bulkheads were recommended but not mandatory, and probably I'd say nearly half the fleet have put in other watertight bulkheads, either at the back of the boat, forward of the steering post, the rudder post, or even amidship. So Jean-Luc, Mark Slatz, Philippe Peche, Antoine, and others all put a watertight bulkhead in the middle of the boat. Now that's because they're small boats, it's hard to put a lot of bulkheads in, watertight bulkheads, because you can't move around. And secondly, it's hard to get like true subdivision flotation. So if you fill one complete compartment, it may hold the boat up, it may not, but it's worth doing if you can. And a lot of them have done that. So there's a mixed bag. The next question he asked was, how do they avoid an underwater container? And what's the probability of hitting one? Well, you can't avoid them because you don't know that you're there. You know, you're not out looking all the time. So if it's a luck of the draw situation. A couple of the entrants have had what I'd call serious or strong impacts with underwater objects, pretty much stopping the boat, you know, or going from, you know, slowing right down. They've hit something, whack, they come up, or it's at night time, can't work out what it is. So what's the probability? The probability is very high. It's as simple as that. There's a lot of rubbish floating around now, and I think you'll see this in the next Vendée Globe. In the last Vendée Globe, there were a lot of boats hit things. They're possibly a bit more at risk because they're going so fast. This is the other thing. We're doing 5 or 6 knots. They're doing like 30 knots, so that sort of ups the ante a bit. And it's a serious problem for them, and it's an issue for GGR, but not as big as it might be because we're generally not going super fast either. But there's a lot of stuff out there now. Some suggestions are up to 10,000 containers a year are lost. A lot of them will sink. But if you've got something inside that container that's buoyant, whatever, the container might float around for months, if not years. So it is a serious problem. And I wanted to know about how do they avoid it when they're asleep, or avoid other boats when they're asleep. Well, if you know they're shipping around, you don't go to sleep. They've got radar alarms, they've got AIS alarms, all this sort of stuff on the boat, so to alert them, and those systems work. They work very well, you know, so that's one. And the final question was, do we warn entrants if they're running into danger, if they hadn't had a sextant sight for a long time, or they're closing Cape Horn and they don't know where they are, or somewhere else, and we think it's dangerous? Would we give them a position? Yes, we would, and yes, we have, because we're not, you know, common sense prevails on all of this. That's standard practice in all races. You may remember the Volvo race when one of the boats went up on a reef, and the boat was pretty much written off, but they managed to salvage it. That brought up a lot of conversations, and the reality is now in traditional yacht racing, and we're not traditional, as in we don't have yacht racing rules, we have collision regulations only, but even in traditional yacht racing, it's written into the rules now that a race committee can notify an entrant without penalty of danger if they believe it's relevant. So we do exactly the same thing. Okay, Darwin Korea wanted to know I wanted to know what sort of any good types of wind. Oh, I can't understand my writing again. No, can't. So Sasha Ebert wanted to know what wattage of solar panels are the entrants got on their boats. It varies. As a minimum, they have to have 160 watts. Okay, that's under the race rules. Some took a lot more. Some chopped them up and had lots of little ones and so on. And generally, the performance was pretty average. A couple of them, they worked really well as they were supposed to, but I was surprised. I think there were some installation issues with some entrants that didn't pay attention to it, and they weren't getting the sort of performance that they should have got. But generally, you know, that'll be a big thing for the next GGR. We'll be looking at that a bit closer, because solar panels are really effective. I mean, on our boat that we've got in Tonga now, we've got 2,300 watts of solar panels, and you can't even use all the power. It's fantastic. But in the GGR, it's a real safety factor, you know, to have power. So that'll be relevant for the future. So yeah, 160 watts. Okay, next one. Belinda Kaleo wanted to know how's Uku's food really holding out? Well, all we know is he's running out, but I think he's okay because he's coming in fast now, and that means he probably had enough to last until Monday, Tuesday next week apparently, and looks like he's going to be on Friday or Saturday. So that's a bit better, and he could always open his life raft if he had to get the food out of there. So he's not saying it's desperate at the moment. It's just he's just hungry. So, and also she was wondering about the water situation with all the entrants. All the entrants seem okay with the water now. They've been getting enough water in the doldrums and all that sort of stuff, and in the Atlantic. So no one's stressed on water. They're drinking quite a lot, which is kind of cool. Okay, Jean Casto wanted to know about the water generator types, and he's thinking this for himself. There are two types of water generator that are being used. One's the Watt & See, which is like a white bladed, looks like a rudder on the back of the boat with a little tiny propeller and a little generator at the bottom. They seem to be okay. They've been working. Susie had problems. She hit something, broke a prop, managed to change it. Jean-Luc broke one of his mounts. He had a sort of a custom mount on the top, but he was able to repair it and keep using it, and they provide a lot of power. That was the cause of his infringement in the penalty box. You may remember he tacked down and then he tacked again and went straight out of the box and kept going. The reason he went straight out of the box is because he could only use the water generator on one tack. Because on one side you got a midships rudder, on the other side he had the hydrovane wind vane, and on the opposite side he had the water generator. So he needs to be on one tack to keep that side down low when he's using the water generator, and he didn't realise he was going so fast. So you know, but Watt & See seem to be pretty good. Certainly the Vendée Globe boats are using them. A lot of high-tech boats. They're good for fast speed, not slow speed. But I've never used one, but they're fine. And then there's this other type, and Istvan has one, and also Tapio has one. And we were really worried because he's had problems on the Atlantic leg. Then he lost his engine as well. And basically, I shouldn't talk about it, touch wood, but that one water generator has been powering his boat since the South Atlantic, or in fact, since the equator, really, all the way, and it's still going. That's because he has solar panels, but something went wrong there, and they're basically just trickle charging. So he really needs that water generator. It's going fine. I don't know the name, the brand of the one that they've got on those ones, but they're funny because they're mounted in a different way. But you can probably get the photos and just Google water generator and look for a similar item when you see water generator, and you'll pick it up from there. Guy Waits wanted to know was a comment question, because he's thinking of entering the race, I think. Rustlers, there's a huge amount of rustlers here, so what else can realistically expect to be competitive in the GGR? Because the rustlers are there, and it looks like we've got rustler number 1, rustler number 2, rustler number 3, and then a Tradewind 35. And he said, forgetting about the skipper skill and the planning and preparation, what other boats are there? Well, this is a personal opinion, right? Because with sailing, everyone will have their own opinion. I'm not an expert, but I certainly did a lot of reading and research in the beginning of the GGR to look at the potential performance of boats on paper. And a Rustler 36 is a nice boat, there's no question. Again, and Jean-Luc confers on this, potentially the Gear 36 that Tapio's got is one of the fastest boats on paper. Okay, but there's other issues with that. The other one is the Saga 36. Potentially that's a very fast boat, and Mark Slatz even confers on that. You know, he thought if he does it again, well, maybe you'll look at that boat. And there's two others in my mind that are real. Really interesting. One, we even wonder sometimes whether we should have even approved it, but we have, and there's one already being prepared now for the 22 GGR. That's the Vancouver 34. Now, on paper, the way I see it, with their hull shape and everything, that's a potentially hot boat. And the other one, of course, is the Cape Dory 36. It's a hugely powerful boat. If someone gets hold of one of them, they're only really available in America. I reckon that has legs over a lot of things because it's a powerful boat. Big rig, big hull, long water lines, good ballast, everything about the Cape Dory 36 to me smells of a winner. So there's plenty there. And there's boats out there already. I've spoken to there's 3 new designs that might turn up. We don't talk about it now because an entrant, for instance, in 22 will talk to me about approval of a boat, and I'll look at it and I'll say, yeah, that meets the rule, you're in. And no one knows what that boat is yet, right? And so we don't approve it until he puts his entry in. Once he's paid up entrant, then we'll list it as an approved boat. But until then, those entrants want to sit on it. And there's 3 other boats already that look like they'll turn up, and they're not on the current list. So there's boats out there, that's cool. Now I can't work out why. Let me have a look at this other one that I missed here. Looks any good? Oh, okay. There's towing logs. This is the last question. I want to know about Walker's logs. Are they any good? The way this is from Darwin, Korea. It looks like they get caught up in the wind vane all the time, or fish or sharks come along and eat them, and all this sort of stuff. Well, the reality is Walker's logs are very good. They're very accurate, they're very simple, and you can carry spares. You can lose them. Fish do take them, but not as often as you might think. You could, if I was preparing for the GGR and wanted to use a Walker's log, I would probably take 4 impellers, and I would probably take at least 3 lines. With the swivels and the weights and so on, and that should be enough to get around. And in the GGR, I think we've got stories of about 3 or 4 total that have lost impellers. So they're pretty good, So yeah, straightforward. Okay, that's really about it. So I think we can leave it at that. We're looking forward to another interesting week, and we're going to see Uku soon, which is exciting. See you later. Thanks a lot.